Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling. So this is something you probably weren't expecting. I've decided that I wanted to react to this. I didn't want to wait or anything. So I grew up with Rocko's Modern Life. Like, this was a show that I watched all the time. And while I don't remember every little detail, there are quite a few things I remember. Like, I remember our main three characters were Rocko, Filbert, and Heifer. All three of them got laughs in like these different kind of ways. Heifer was like this cow who's not quite dumb, but kind of the goofy, ridiculous one. Filbert's more of the smart and calculated kind of guy. He has some very neurotic tendencies, and tends to even show maybe a little bit of OCD. And then Rocko's kind of like, he's kind of like the everyman type of character. He's a little goofy. He loves his dog, Pork Chop. I believe Pork Chop is the name of his dog. I might be wrong on that. He loves his friends, and he just wants to have a good time, just wants to enjoy life. I remember the big heads, Rocko's neighbors, who are, I think they're supposed to be toads or frogs or something like that. There's three of them. There's Mr. Big Head, who I also think is Rocko's boss. Mrs. Big Head, who is flirtatious as fuck. Also, Mr. Big Head is a kind of an asshole. He's really mean, really angry a lot. Mrs. Big Head, like I said, is flirtatious as fuck. And then they had a son. I don't remember too much about their son. I think they kind of played like a joke, like where it was like he's trying to be different from his parents, but then he can like have those moments of his father's rage, basically. I don't remember for sure, though. It has been a long time. And then there's other characters, like I believe there's this guy who was basically just a foot with a face. And basically they would just get up to a bunch of hijinks and all of that. It was a really fun series, and I really think it was pretty damn popular. A lot of people really seemed to enjoy it, and were really excited when they announced that they were bringing it back. Now, Static Cling, I believe, is just a special. It's not like a full-blown movie, but it's not like an episode of a new series or anything. It's just a special. They're just bringing it back. They might do something more in the future. It probably depends on how well this does. I know nothing about it as well, other than the name being Static Cling. I have heard nothing about it in terms of story, in terms of like how the characters are portrayed, the art and animation upgrades, all of that stuff, the voice acting. I guess we're just gonna kind of have to see on all of that. I have heard some people say it's really good, and I've actually had a friend tell me that I need to see it. Which could mean a lot of things, to be fair, but like she told me I need to see it. So that could mean a few things, and I have a few ideas of what it could mean, but I don't know exactly where it's going to go. We'll just kind of have to see. I am excited, though, because, again, I grew up with this, so I'm really hoping that it ends up being pretty darn good. So let's just get this going. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below. Follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the special. So that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. Okay, so Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling, the new Netflix special. This was Rocko's Modern Life, just straight up. This was definitely the same kind of humor, the same kind of spirit, the same kind of self-referential stuff going on. It was very, very much the same kind of thing. And you could almost say that that goes against the point, but it doesn't, because it introduced some changes. And I'll get to how that ties all in. But So there's a couple notable changes here. First off, this takes place 20 years after the events of the main series. Um, Rocko and Heifer and Filbert, along with Spunky, have been trapped in space for 20 years. They go down back to O-Town after finding out that the remote Heifer had been sitting on, which they thought was lost, actually straight up has a return button. So they go back, reconnect with old friends, but find so much different. Filbert and Heifer are able to just get into stuff pretty easily, get into the new things of the modern era. But Rocko has a hard time. Not only with his favorite show having been canceled, that's just kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. Everything about this new era is so different for him that he's having a hard time connecting with it. It's culture shock. Let's be honest. Because he's from the 90s. He went away for 20 years. All of this stuff, he's just kind of being, he's experiencing it all at once. It's a lot different. Granted, it wouldn't be as bad as, like, say, someone from, like, the 1500s or something coming to modern day. That would be insane. But when he finds out that his favorite show had been canceled, that's kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back. And so the goal is to get it to re-air and to show a new special and stuff. And the idea behind it is that Rocko wants one thing from his past, just one thing to make him feel more at home. With a little bit of help from Mr. Big Head, a little bit, they go back to the company, and the idea to bring back the Fatheads, which is a show created by the child of Mr. and Mrs. Big Head. The Mr. Big Head's boss agrees to it, but they're going to do it with, like, new technology and stuff. Obviously, a play on how a lot of shows have been brought back using new technology. But in the end, it's, like, obvious that they need the original creator. Rocko, Filbert, and Heifer go off to try and find Ralph Bighead. They end up finding Ralph in a ice cream truck in the desert, which, okay. But Ralph reveals that she's now Rachel. And this part got me to tear up. Because it's like right when we first see her, like before it actually reveals she's become trans, which, by the way, it never actually says it never actually says specifically she's trans. It never uses that word, never uses anything like it. I mean, it's obvious. They basically say it without saying it, but yeah. Interesting. And I don't think they needed to, like, outright say the word trans, so I'm fine with it. But yeah, even before that, it's like you see her, and you could see the eyelashes and everything. You could see the hair is different, and all of that, and it's super obvious. But at the same time, it's like I wasn't quite 100% sure, so I'm just like waiting on bated breath and everything. And when it finally revealed it, it's like just the best thing. And the thing is, Rocko, Filbert, and Heifer accept it. They're just okay with it. They're like, oh, cool. And from then on, they refer to her with she, her pronouns and as Rachel. And that's awesome. It's just blatant acceptance. And so they managed to convince her to work on the special and bring her back. And she comes into contact with her father, who's more old-fashioned and doesn't accept it. He even says that without Ralph, there is no special and he's going to quit. And it really brings Rachel down because it's her first time seeing her father in a while. And to be completely just disrespected and treated like shit like that. Like at first when he's like saying like just no, no, and all, and she's like yes, and I like that because it's like she's so confident in it, and she's found her happiness, and she's just ready to be herself and not going to let anyone tell her no. Like, but then like once he's just like doubles down on it and quits and everything because of it, it just it gets to her. She couldn't hold that back any longer. It gets to her and it bothers her, and she leaves. Um, and so they end up having to get her back and convince Mr. Big Head to accept her. Um, she does eventually make the special, and Mr. Big Head is brought there, and he eventually does accept her after being reminded of a memory from the past they both hold very dear. And in the end, with their house destroyed, they'd all just head off in the ice cream truck. Rocko, his big issue with now that the show has been rebooted and all with the new special, his problem is that it's too different because a baby big head has been, or fat head has been added to the show. And he felt it was too different because of that it wasn't the show he had loved. And here's the thing. He had been watching reruns of that show, a single VHS tape of them, for 20 years straight, nothing but. So that's a bit of an extreme circumstance. A lot of this mirrors like our real world and a lot of people in the real world. I don't think this part does completely because, again, that's kind of an extreme circumstance. Most of us, even those of us who are like really disappointed by a lot of the modern reboots like Teen Titans Go or Powerpuff Girls 2016 or whatnot, we haven't watched nothing but the old stuff for that many years. Not even just, not counting like just 1 or 2 episodes or anything. We haven't watched like the show on its own with nothing but for that long. We've moved on to other stuff. We watched plenty of other stuff. So it's not like we've been just completely obsessed with that one thing, even if we love those shows for a great deal. So it's a little different there. But the concept and main idea is still the same. And the thing is, this special clearly is teaching the message that change happens and you've just got to accept it. Whether you like it or not is not really the point. You just kind of have to accept that change happens and you have to move on with it. And I think that's fair because it's true. Change happens and it's going to keep happening. Whether you accept it, whether you're okay with it or not, is beyond the point. If you just remain like angry and aggressive towards it the entire time, it's not going to help anyone. If you just accept that it's going to happen, even if you don't always agree with it, then you'll be much happier, let's be honest. And this reminds me of something I saw on What Would You Do video lately. Lately, I've been getting into those on YouTube. They have the What Would You Do YouTube channel. If you've never heard of it, What Would You Do is it's a TV show where the host, John Quinones, basically sets up these social experiments. Like, let's say they're in a restaurant and they have these actors portraying a gay couple. In fact, here, I'll use actually an actual example. There's this one where they're in a restaurant and they have these actors portraying a gay military couple. And then there's this other actor who's portraying basically an asshole. Basically someone who doesn't agree with homosexuality, especially in the military. And so they set up this scenario in a real restaurant with real patrons, real customers all around them. And they have the actors play out the scene. So the woman, the actor, the naysayer, is flirting with the military guy. And then he says he's there for a date, and his boyfriend comes in, who's also in the military. And she starts heckling them and basically telling them why that's wrong, why it's wrong to be gay and everything. And it's basically the idea, as the name of the show implies, What Would You Do, is to see how these real people would react in this scenario. It's a social experiment. And so it's like you see these people sticking up for the military couple. You see some people who aren't sticking up. And in a couple of these scenarios they've shown, there are people who say like, no, I don't agree with homosexuality. But that's just how the world is nowadays. I don't agree with it, but there's no reason to be an asshole. There's no reason to attack people because of it. Just accept it and move on with your life. And that is, it's not the best stance to have because it's still being unaccepting of people. But it's better than just being a straight up asshole towards them. And it's showing that at least you're willing to accept that it's a thing. At least you're not like attacking them or berating them or anything. And you're even in a lot of these cases of those what would you do's, they're even sticking up for these people. But yeah, it's like I feel that kind of situation with Rocko at the end here. Rocko accepts that change happens and that he needs to move on with it. I don't think he actually I don't think he was fully okay still with the fatheads being changed. But that wasn't even the issue in the first place. The issue was that he couldn't accept all the change that had happened in the world in the 20 years they had been gone. The fatheads was only relevant because he wanted the fatheads back as a way to basically stay in the past. And so he accepted that change is going to happen. Things are not going to be the same. But he's going to move on. He's going to find other things to get hooked into. He's going to be able to survive. And it's, again, this special, the Rocko's Modern Life special, Static Cling, is not saying that you have to accept and agree with everything. It's saying that you have to accept and agree that change is happening, whether it's for good or for bad, whether you like it or not, whether some things happen you don't like or some things happen that you do. It's going to keep changing. Things are going to keep changing, and that's just how the world works. Progress is necessary for human survival. Change is necessary. It's important. Not all changes are going to be good, and not all changes are going to be good for each person. So, yeah, I think that was what it was trying to go for here, and I think it handled it well. And the title, I didn't get at first. The title is Static Cling. I didn't get that at first, but like I was thinking like laundry, you know? But no, it's talking about clinging to the static past, basically. Trying to cling to that past and not move, not budge on your beliefs, on what you're used to, what you know. And that goes for both Rocko and Mr. Big Head here. Mr. Big Head was clinging to his ideals of normalcy, basically. On Ralph, his son, he didn't want to accept Rachel, his daughter, because he felt like it was too far removed from what he believed, what he knew. Rocko, meanwhile, was clinging to the static past by trying to force things from the past to be in the current day, by trying to force something that would make him feel at home rather than adapt to what the world is now. And in the end, he had to let that go. He had to accept the world is different from where he left it. And I think it handled it well. Like I said, the humor was great. The humor was everything that you would have expected from a Rocko's Modern Life episode back in the day. You had all the great stuff. In fact, I think they even went a little further on some of it than they would have gotten if they had it on television these days. By having it on Netflix, they were able to get away with a lot more, like the nipple powers and Mrs. Big Head storing stuff in her tits and stuff like that. Plus, I mean, honestly, the transgender part, they would not have been able to get away with that on network television if they tried to put this on Nickelodeon. it would not have flown. They would not have been able to get away with something like that because it would have been too controversial and the network wouldn't have allowed it. Nickelodeon, let's be honest, is only just recently allowing homosexuality. They did, remember, just 5 years ago with Legend of Korra, they severely restricted what Bright could do with Legend of Korra. They kept them from being able to fully embrace the Korrasami angle, and that's why they only had that more ambiguous hand-holding scene at the end of the series instead of like an actual kiss like Aang and Katara had in Last Airbender. So they've gotten better lately. They have. I mean, Loud House is a great example of that with Clyde's fathers. But I don't think they're quite ready for something like this because this is big, especially with how the creators of the show wanted to portray it and what they wanted to say about it. This would not have flown on Nickelodeon, not at all. So having it on Netflix allowed them to get away with a lot more and honestly be more like Rocko's Modern Life. A lot of that humor is very, very connected to this series. But again, it wouldn't fly on modern day Nickelodeon, on the television. Especially, like I said, a lot of the more adult humor even. Like, again, Mrs. Big Head storing stuff in her tits. And as well as the entire thing with, I had just mentioned it, now I'm blanking out. You know what I mean, though. So were able to get away with the voices. I think they were probably all the same. At least they sounded like it. We had some good characters from the past, like Heifer's grandfather was there as a ghost. We saw Filbert's wife, who's still fucking adorable. I love her. The Foot guy was there, even if it was just a small cameo. Of course, the superhero dude. A lot of our favorite old characters were there, and yeah, it felt good. It felt like Rocko's Modern Life. But at the same time, like I said, it did embrace change and make some notable changes. Even outside of just Rachel, like Mr. and Mrs. Big Head left. Their house was destroyed and they left. They just drove away with Rachel and they're going to start a new life. Again, it takes place in the modern day, so a lot of it's going to be different in that way. And here's the thing. This is very clearly being touted as a reboot. So at the beginning, like in my pre-thoughts, I was saying, like, I don't know if they're planning on doing more, but they might if this does well enough. And I think that if it does, they very well could. And I think they even might be planning for that based on what we saw in this. Because again, a lot of the humor in this is very self-referential. A lot of it is very much they're talking about themselves, let's be honest. So I definitely think a lot of the entire reboot aspect, like actually calling it a straight up reboot, I think that they're hopefully planning on bringing more back. Like maybe starting a new season or something on Netflix as well. And I would be all for that. I would watch it, hell yeah. And I hope that this special does well enough to warrant that. Because there's easily a lot they could still do with this. Yes, they crammed a lot of updated shit for Rocko to have to deal with in this special. But there's still so much they could do and so much they could build with this. They could also introduce a lot more characters. They could have an entire like subplot line going on with the big heads. There's just a lot of great ideas that this could go into. And I really hope that they do. And now I feel like I would be remiss to not talk about my thoughts on reboots. And you guys probably already know what I think. I have a very mixed bag reaction for reboots. It just depends on the reboot. As I previously mentioned, Teen Titans Go and Powerpuff Girls 2016. I hate those. I think they're terrible. But then you have stuff like She-Ra, which is phenomenal and does everything right. And it just really depends. I mean, you even have stuff like Voltron Legendary Defender, which started off really good, but ended up turning bad in the end. It just really depends on the show. I've had reboots that I've really liked, and I've had ones I've really hated. And that's probably going to remain. That's probably going to remain that way. Not every reboot I see from here on out is going to be good. At least for me, personally. Not everyone's going to be bad, though. And we're just going to kind of have to see where it goes from here. But this one, for Rocko Modern Life, very good. Very, very good. This was everything I wanted it to be. And more, honestly. I was not expecting the transgender part. I was not expecting Rachel to have come out here. I really wasn't like fully expecting Rachel to be in this. So I'm really glad that they did that. And they did it in such an accepting, just really respectful way. So yeah, everything about it was so well handled. It just felt like they really respected trans people with that. And Rachel was great. Rachel was a great character. It was great to see her like this. Yeah, I just really think that this worked out well. This was a great reboot, and I really hope that they bring in more. I want to see more. I want to see like maybe another season or just more specials. I would love that. In the meantime, though, tell me what you thought about Rocko's Modern Life Static Cling down in the comments below. And thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.
And though you've come through many obstacles,